Walk through a major city on a weekend, and you might hear them before you see them. Groups of men using megaphones to deliver aggressive street sermons, standing in rigid formations, dressed in dark paramilitary uniforms and combat boots. The rhetoric they broadcast is intentionally confrontational. They routinely target Jewish people, white people, and the LGBTQ+ community with inflammatory language, tactics that have earned certain factions official hate group designations from civil rights organizations. This visualization breaks down the estimated hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. who identify as Hebrew Israelites. While these loud, confrontational groups dominate public perception, they actually make up a much smaller fringe, about 20 to 30%. The vast majority belong to moderate communities that focus on traditional Judaism and family life, avoiding this hostile street theater entirely. Looking at this intelligence report, we can see exactly how these fringe groups operate when authorities step in. The highlighted section shows they rely heavily on a First Amendment shield. They know their legal rights regarding free speech and public assembly, and they intentionally record police interactions to build a narrative that they are being religiously persecuted by a hostile state. The primary danger these organizations pose lies away from the public cameras. Behind the shouting matches and tactical gear, leadership builds an entirely isolated, closed-loop ecosystem designed to trap their followers. The indoctrination begins at what the groups call campuses. Rather than acting as accredited academic institutions, these facilities operate as centralized hubs built to enforce group ideology and organize new recruits into a paramilitary structure. This organizational chart outlines their rigid chain of command. At the top, a bishop or elder holds supreme authority over doctrine and strategy. Below them, deacons manage logistics and discipline, officers lead the street operations, and general members are classified simply as soldiers. Checking the bottom of the page, we see the financial engine behind these campuses. They do not charge tuition. Instead, they enforce a mandatory taxation system, requiring members to hand over 10 to 20% of their gross income in dues. Leadership also pressures members to find employment exclusively within businesses owned by the camp or by fellow believers. When you surrender a fifth of your paycheck to the organization and rely on its leadership for your job, your financial independence vanishes. The group creates a self-sustaining economic loop that leaves members without the resources or outside professional networks needed to walk away. This isolation extends directly into where members sleep. Multiple families move into shared spaces, physically shielding themselves from the outside world. This document details the urban collective model, where groups rent entire multi-unit apartment buildings in major cities. Once inside, living conditions are stark. Shared spaces are strictly segregated between unmarried men and women, and kitchens are meticulously monitored for forbidden foods. This secondary page highlights even deeper levels of separation. Many radical enclaves reject modern medicine entirely in favor of spiritual healing, raising serious concerns regarding medical neglect for children.
Those children are almost exclusively homeschooled, turning these cramped apartments into dual-purpose classrooms. Privacy practically does not exist. In the most extreme camps, the head of the house or an appointed officer has the right to enter any room at any time to monitor behavior and ensure no one is engaging in worldly habits. You eliminate someone's privacy, control their diet, limit their medical care, and keep them under constant surveillance. The result is an environment where individual thought is systematically dismantled, replaced by total psychological submission to the group. This system of control imposes specific, severe restrictions on female members. This gender dynamics report breaks down their silence doctrine, where women are entirely excluded from organizational governance. Shifting to the highlighted observation, public street preaching is strictly a male domain. Women are explicitly forbidden from speaking on a microphone or engaging the public in debate. The surveillance of members also applies to physical appearance. This assessment details the strict physical restrictions imposed on women, including mandatory long skirts and head coverings. Any deviation from this code results in immediate public rebuke and social shaming from the rest of the community. The movement also actively discourages women from pursuing higher education or independent careers. The goal is to ensure they remain entirely dependent on male leadership for financial and logistical survival. By aggressively teaching that a woman's path to salvation is found exclusively through submission to her husband or camp leaders, The organization rebrands systemic oppression as divine protection. This theology makes it incredibly difficult for women to recognize, let alone challenge, their own marginalization. From the outside, the tactical gear and formations project the image of a highly trained militia. However, intelligence analysts classify their actual field exercises as low-intensity paramilitary training. Despite their aggressive posturing, these groups have never demonstrated any coordinated offensive combat capabilities on a large scale. That lack of coordinated military capacity does not mean the ideology is harmless. This historical analysis documents deadly exceptions, like the 1980s Nation of Yahweh murders in Miami and the 2019 Jersey City shooting, where 2 individuals heavily radicalized by this theology attacked a kosher grocery store, killing several people. Taking all of this into account, official assessments place the movement's overall threat rating at moderate to elevated. For the average citizen walking down the street, these factions represent a high social nuisance, but a very low physical threat. The official advisory on this page provides a simple countermeasure: avoid direct engagement. Because their strategy relies on public friction to generate content, the safest response is to keep your distance and avoid filming them aggressively, which can trigger an intentional confrontation. The camouflage uniforms and loud megaphones are ultimately a distraction. The most effective operations run by these radical factions are waged internally, slowly dismantling the financial independence, personal privacy, and individual agency of the people who follow them.